It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Smooth and Savvy is joined by Light and Fluffy for an hour of talk, music, and fun, along with our own Periscope girl. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Smooth and Savvy himself, Douglas Coleman.
Hey, ho, ho, ho. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are ya?
That's a cool intro, Douglas.
Yeah, I kind of like that intro myself. It's a vast improvement, I think, over our other intro. Because the other intro, I was introducing myself. And it just sounded weird having my voice introducing me.
It's a real introducer's voice, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, so I think that getting this guy to do this was one of those Fiverr deals, for $5 he made that. I think that was reasonable.
It's very cool. It's very intro-y,
Yeah, so I guess we'll keep that one for now. Please, everybody, welcome our co-host, the light and fluffy Cindy Diadamo. Okay, there we go. Now there's your introduction. I kind of like how he did that. Smooth and Savvy meets Light and Fluffy.
Savvy Yeah, it's funny.
Anyway, so you were telling me that you were up very late last night. Dave Martinez had a show.
Yeah, David Martinez last summer played on 4th of July at the Mathis Freedom Festival with an old friend of his, the band Vallejo. And after that festival, they talked about getting together for a show in Corpus Christi, which took place last night at House of Rock, to a really receptive crowd. We watched them on Periscope somewhat, and the band Vallejo is fabulous. They're kind of like a Santana-ish band in that they have an extra percussion section and a lot of the cool guitars. And a lot of the girls, were getting really into it towards the end of the night. It was pretty fun. And Dave was texting me different pictures and, of course, sending us the live Periscope. So we were up into, well, I won't say the late hours of the night because it actually turned into the morning. You know how those things can go. And then there was an after party. I know. I can't imagine the condition anybody was in this morning.
Well, I'm sure they're fast asleep by now.
I would hope so. Or, coming to for round two, because I think that there's more shows and things today. I don't know. These guys really, it sounds like a lot of fun, but it is a lot of work because, of course, they have to be totally rehearsed for this and they have to do sound check and then they play for I don't know how long and they're up until I don't know what hour. Then there's photos and things after. So there's a lot to do.
Oh, no doubt. Well, we've got a couple of announcements to make. One is I want to re-announce the Burbs is coming on October 1st, which is the premiere of the new online theater show, is a horror show, which we've been talking about.
It's really good, really good.
Yeah, so I want to play the promo.
Hi, this is Leanne Moonraven. Along with the Carmen Online Theater Group, I'm pleased to present The Burbs, Radio Theater Horror, beginning Thursday, October 1st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope you'll join us as we embark on a story with Lisa and Brittany Sheridan, mother and daughter who move into a new neighborhood after the death of Lisa's husband. It isn't long before strange things start happening. The funny thing about The Burbs is, well, maybe it's not so funny, is that it's based on true events. Join us Thursday, October 1st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to CarmenTheaterOnline.com. That's CarmenTheaterOnline.com for more details.
Yeah. Are you scared already?
It's so creepy. It's great.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that.
And being in October is so cool because, of course, it's Halloween month. And now Halloween in the U.S. is a big thing. It's not like it used to be where you just, put on your little costume and go for candy. People really get into it. There's stores and everything. So I think it's a perfect month to launch it.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So looking forward to that on October 1st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The other thing I wanted to say is that we are doing an author's special today for this show. And we've got 3 authors who are going to talk and tell us about themselves. So they'll be coming up in just a few minutes. We've got Jane Yates from Oxford, England. We've got Rosemary Johns, who's also from Oxford. And we've got Jason P. Crawford, who is from Hawaii. So we're really covering the world today. So they'll be coming up in just a few minutes. I wanted to also give a shout out to our syndicate, who is WROM in Detroit. We just got picked up by them and did
How exciting.
First show last week. So our show airs on WROM at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesdays. Please tune in there, and you can listen to the Douglas Coleman Show.
So if you don't get enough of us, you can get us in double doses.
Exactly. If you just can't get enough of the Douglas Coleman Show, you can hear it twice a week now. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So we've got you covered no matter what time you want to listen to us. We're on. So what else is happening in the news? The Pope is here.
Really? Isn't that amazing? And he's so accessible. He's got a Twitter account.
You know what I thought was funny is I've seen him going around in the Pope Mobile, and it's open on the sides. I thought he had to be completely in the bulletproof bubble.
But I also saw in Philly, I was watching over the Periscope from a TV station. There's something called the Pope Wall that they put up between the audience and the roadway, which is, I don't know if that's bulletproof, but it's some kind of, it reminds me of what's in a hockey arena.
See, I didn't see that part. They only showed the picture I saw was just the Pope Mobile going down the street, but it was a side shot, and his arm was sticking out, so you knew there wasn't any glass on the sides. It was only in the...
I think that's to do the Holy Wave.
Yeah, the Holy Wave is different than the Queen's Wave, isn't it?
Yes, the Queen's Wave is that sort of little, almost like the beauty contestant wave that they do on the parade float.
Right, but the Pope has his own wave. Is that something that they go to school for, to learn how to wave? Because the Queen has her own wave and the Pope has his, and I'm just wondering if there's like a school for waving.
Waving school.
Yeah, that you have to learn how to do that.
I think there is probably Pope etiquette, because I know that there's royal etiquette. And I also wonder, does he always wear that garb, the long dress robe thing, like all the time? Like if he's getting a cheeseburger, is he dressed as the Pope? Or does he look like a regular guy?
I have a feeling the Pope doesn't go out for cheeseburgers. I think he has everything delivered in.
Oh, he's a pretty cool guy. I don't know. Maybe he has his holy staff go out through the drive-thru in the Pope Mobile. Can you imagine?
Oh, now that would be a sight at Burger King, wouldn't it?
Oh, good Lord.
All right. So aside from the Pope, what else is happening?
Well, sometimes I just go through the Twitter feed to see what's interesting coming down the news. And since I have a big account, my news feed, or what you would call the live feed end of Twitter, is almost constant. So there's all kinds of craziness to look at, and something caught my eye, which was interesting. It was tips and tricks to make your Twitter experience more effective, or, one of those hints type of thing.
Yeah.
So one of the hints was to ask a random question. And I thought, okay, I'll bite. I'm going to go with that. So I just asked a random question. I happened to be having a cup of coffee. So I said, wow, this coffee's delicious. What could be better than coffee? And do you really think people are going to respond to that? Well, they did. And all kinds of crazy comments got back to me. And one guy said, well, the only thing better than coffee is beer. And then we got into this long conversation about what kind of beers we like. So evidently, if you ask some random question of any type on your Twitter feed, you will get random people talking back to you, which will evolve into conversations that you have no idea you were going to have. So that was...
Was it the high point of your day? Was that conversation about beer?
I think it's interesting because I did not know that I knew the guy. And he was from Maryland, which is where I grew up. And that evolved into a conversation about seafood. One thing leads to another when you're in these random type conversations. So I have so many people on my Twitter that are my so-called friends that really I have no idea who a large portion of them are. So it kind of pulls people out of the woodwork. So it really does work in a kind of strange roundabout way.
Yeah, true. Speaking of conversation, I should point out to people that we have a new chat room on the website. So when you tune in for our show, don't go to the Spreaker chat bubble anymore, because I'm going to lock that. You have to go to the new chat room, the new and improved Douglas Coleman Show chat room, which is a sidebar on the page. So you'll see it. It says chat room. Click on that. You log in with your Facebook or Twitter, or you can just create an account yourself. You can put an icon on there so we can see what you look like. If you want to use some weird icon, you can do that too. The chat room has all kinds of, how do you say that word? Is it emoticon or emocon?
Oh, the emojis.
Emojis, okay. Lots and lots of those.
Yeah, it's got all kind of cool things to do.
And it's got this one function that I really like, where
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, where you can create a poll right in the chat room, and you can give people a choice of A or B. And you can type any question you want and give an A or B choice for an answer. And I think that we tried that. Yeah, I think if we get the right people in the chat room, that's going to be a hoot. Because some of the questions could be ridiculous and off the wall and very funny, I think.
It's probably the most interactive and fun chat that I've seen. And I've been to a lot of different chat rooms associated with radio. This one is super fun. And I know that all you guys who are listeners who like to have a lot of fun in chat will love this chat room.
I have never seen that particular program in any chat room. So
nor have I.
I don't know if this is brand new. I stumbled across this chat room by accident. It's free. You just upload the thing, you upload the code, and you paste it into your page, and there it is. And it was like amazing. And I went through about 6 or 7 different chat programs before I got to this one. And all the other ones had things that I didn't like about them or just wouldn't install at all. It was a real pain because I kept putting in chat rooms and taking them out. And then I finally got this one, and I thought, wow, this one is really good. Plus, I like the way that it sort of sits in the side, so it doesn't interfere with the page. You can still scroll up and down the page. The chat room doesn't move. It just stays there. You can also pop it out if you want.
People who are chatting, too, because of all the little emojis and things that you can do as a chatter. Some of the chat rooms are just very boring and very difficult to navigate. So I think that that's why some people shy away from them. But this one is really easy to use and lots of fun.
I don't like the one on Spreaker because you can't see who's in the room.
Oh, yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, there's, you just see people pop up on the thing.
Right.
I don't like it. I like to have the list where you can see everybody who's in the room.
Who's there? Yeah, right.
All of a sudden, surprise, somebody else pops in. I never liked that bit about Spreaker too much, so I'm glad to be getting rid of that. And so please look for the new chat room when you tune into our show. Also, we might open up that chat room when we're on WROM as well. We can do that. So,
okay.
You just go to WROM, open up the page, the show starts, you can minimize that page. The audio will still be going, and then you can just come back to our page with the chat room. The chat room also, like I said, pops out. You can click on pop out, so it'll be on its own window, so you can move it around with you if you want. That's a nice feature, too. And now, once again, it's time for Lady Lake Corner.
Welcome to Lady Lake Corner for the week of September 29th through October the 6th. You can view our talented roster complete with music samples, show information, photos, and more by visiting reverbnation.com/label/Lady Lake Music. This week, we are excited to announce that our blues guitarist, Leroy Miller, has broken into the top 10 in Los Angeles in blues. Leroy is currently at number 6 in this very tough market, just having passed the well-known blues artist Joe Bonamassa. Leroy has also started climbing the U.S. chart, currently at number 145. We've just received news that he plans a spring tour to Northern California, Washington, Arizona, and Colorado. New music from his new CD, Off the Rails, has just been added, so go on by his Reverb Nation, which is reverbnation.com/Leroy Miller, to hear some of the new music. And that's all for this week's Lady Lake Corner.
Okay, thank you, Cindy, for that wonderful Lady Lake Corner. And we will be back with our first author, Jane Yates, in just a second. My first guest today lives in the historic city of Oxford, England, with her spaniel Mandy. She works at the Pitt River Museum and is amazed and inspired by its wondrous array of objects. Being a museum of anthropology and world archaeology, she often finds herself influenced by its exhibits, and indeed it has helped her write her trilogy for children entitled The Paradox Child series. She is not only a mother, artist, and storyteller, but she's also dyslexic, which only highlights her success even more. She refuses to allow the disorder to halt her dreams and continues to enjoy her favorite hobbies. She is also a lover of steampunk, adventure, and children's stories, which often play a huge role in her own books. Please welcome Jane Yates. Hey, hello, Jane. How are you?
Hello, Douglas. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Hello, Lady Lake.
Wow, my pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
I'm very excited and honoured to be on your show. You're an awesome musician.
Thank you so much. Very kind.
And an amazing radio talent.
What is steampunk?
Oh, right. Okay. Steampunk is like modern things like ray guns and science fiction, but with a Victorian influence. So you can get a ray gun made out of wood and copper because that's the materials they had in the Victorian period. And also the clothes as well are very Victorian-y type clothes. Somebody once said, if you try and imagine it's a modern thing. It was from the 1980s, I believe. Somebody once said, if you imagine you're a Victorian person, imagining what the future would be like. So they probably thought that everybody would be flying around in, amazing airships and things, and then, but make, or have amazing guns or cannons and things, but make the things out of the materials that were available in the Victorian period.
Like copper and tin and pewter,
yes.
I guess. For those people who don't know, can you give us a quick definition of dyslexia?
I can tell you how to spot it. The way to tell without any training, if your child or husband or whatever is dyslexic or just a bad speller will spell the same word wrong the same way every time. Whatever the word is, say just cat, for instance, they'd spell that word wrong exactly the same way every time. But a dyslexic will spell that word in a multiple, and I mean multiple, different orders. So, and often the word before and the word afterwards will have some of the letters in the word in the middle. So the words all sort of merge into each other. So you can see that, give them something to write, and with repetitive wording, say donuts or something, which is quite a hard word to spell. Make them say donuts 4 times in different ways, and then you can see if they're a bad speller, it will be spelt the same way wrong, perhaps the U and the O the wrong way around all the time. But if they're dyslexic, it could have E's in it or anything, absolutely anything in it. Was that clear, Douglas?
Well, yes, it was very clear, but it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. So I'm glad I asked. I thought dyslexia was people who read backwards.
Oh, sometimes they do. There's many different forms of dyslexic. Often the words jump up as well, so you can be reading. Often the white of the paper can interfere with it, and some words appear bigger, the words jump out or jump about the page. So there's all sorts of different forms of it, and there's lots of different ways. But with myself, it's mostly spelling rather than reading. I just can't get this order, can't remember the order of any words. So it's just like I'm always writing how it sounds and not from memory of how it's spelled.
So let's go back a little bit. Where did you grow up?
Oh, in Aldershot. I was born in Aldershot, and then I moved to Wales with my now ex-husband and lived there for a while. But my ancestors come from Banff in Scotland, on my father's side, and my mother's side are from Poland of File in Lancashire.
Aldershot, wasn't that where Charlie Chaplin was born?
It was. Thank you. Not many people know that. I'm a huge Charlie Chaplin fan.
Oh, I am as well, yeah. I do remember
he's
that.
Awesome, isn't he? But he was so comic genius, very clever.
So aside from Charlie Chaplin, is Aldershot famous for anything else?
Yeah, it's a military town. It's where the British Army live, and it's also got a huge base for the Royal Aircraft Establishment, where my father worked and my ex-husband, and my son had an apprenticeship there, so 3 generations.
Wow. So when did you start writing?
I started writing by accident because I'm totally dyslexic, as you announced. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I started studying science with the Open University, and they scored my spelling age at 8 and my reading age at 12. But my reading age has got better now because I read more. But at the time it was a shock, and I never intended to write. But I've always painted and done illustrations and drawings. And I did a cartoon about my lovely spaniel, Mandy, called Fat Spaniel, and I sent it to a local paper, the Blackbird Lees paper in Oxford. And the editor liked it and said I could publish my Fat Spaniel cartoon, which I was very excited about. And then she invited me on a journalist course. Her name's Sarah Edwards, and she's one of these people who believes that everybody can write. She invited me on this journalist course, which is sponsored by a local university. It's only a short course. And then after, I think it was a week, and then it was really good though. And then after that week, she encouraged us to go out into the community and to write about just anything. And I wrote about myself trying to get fit and running a half marathon. And then when I hit 50 years old, I wrote a column called Life Begins at 50. And about halfway through, I ran out of ideas. And I asked people at this sewing class I joined for the column. And they all said about dancing, like pole dancing, belly dancing, ballroom dancing. I said, has anybody got any ideas apart from dancing? And someone said, National Write a Book Month. And I hadn't heard of that. And I said, oh, what's that? And they said, oh, you write a book in the month of November. 50,000 words. And so I thought, oh, I can do that, not realizing how long 50,000 words were. And so that's how the Paradox Child series started. So I didn't start writing books till I was 50. And I'm just in the middle of, I've sort of done my 4th one. It's just trying to be edited at the moment. No, 5th one, sorry. Well, I'll tell you about my book called Garden, which is a rewrite of The Secret Garden, the classic novel, which is over 100 years old now. And to make it steampunk, I've got spaceships and robots, and also it can be like the end of the world. So it starts off where I've killed off half the planet. It starts off quite grim. Half the planet die. And then everybody on this spaceship, apart from the one little girl who's the main character. And then she has to come on to live in her uncle's house. Have you read The Secret Garden? Seen the film? It's an amazing story.
No, I don't think, but we do have a sample clip of one of your audiobooks. Yeah. Shall we play that? Okay, this is, I'm not sure where this sample is. Why don't we just play it and then you can describe what it is that we just listened to, all right?
Very cool. Thank you, Douglas.
Okay, so here's a sample of Garden by Jane Yates.
As he chuckled along, his head dropped back and a cool, thin line of rose-smelling cigarette smoke slid from the corner of his mouth. Aberdeen continued to watch the party from above. As usual, there was no sign of her father. Probably in the engine room of the ship, she guessed. She browsed at all the fresh fruit and flowers in the tall bowls and glasses decorating the table. She knew that they had been picked up the last time the ship had docked at one of the satellite stations. She had learnt that the fragrant exotic flowers had been grown in large artificial garden domes, and she longed to see one. She looked down in awe at the musicians. A large man sat at a glass piano, his fingers elegantly flitting from key to key. Aberdeen could see his fat belly, though, through the transparent top of the piano. It wobbled tastelessly as he played, a huge contrast to his regal demeanour. Aberdeen also noticed a tall, skinny man strumming a black, shiny double bass and 3 female trumpeteers, who all wore brown and white stripy suits. Draped from the metallic ceiling were candle-shaped lights, and in between them dancers gamboled on trapeze ropes. They wore porcelain masks and flamboyantly displayed peacock feathers, midnight blue and jade green, in their hair. They matched the rhythm of the quintet perfectly, Aberdeen thought. The floor was polished to a high shine, and Aberdeen could see the reflection of the sociable people in it. In the corner of the room was an old gentleman who caught Aberdeen's interest. Upon his head was a black top hat, and he rested a glass monocle on his eye, which magnified his golden-brown iris so even Aberdeen could see it. His long, twisting moustache made Aberdeen giggle.
Ha okay.
Wow. So that's near the front of the book, and that's you can get that free to listen to if you sign up for Audible for a free trial. You can get it free to keep. So please do that. And it's read by British actress Anna Parker Naples, who has a wonderful voice.
Yes,
unlike myself. But the whole beauty of Garden was it was edited and by a wonderful British poet called Dan Thompson, who added the most wonderful descriptions to the story. He made the apples crispier and he made the snow crunchier, and he's just brought all the words to life. So it's quite lovely and relaxing to listen to. So please download it.
Well,
give it a shot.
We are out of time. But
okay.
I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a real treat to talk to you. For those people who don't know, Jane Yates is also AKA Periscope Girl on our show. But
Periscope Girl!
Yes, but this week, Periscope Girl is just going to stay in her submarine, and she won't resurface until next week's show. So we look forward to that. So we had her on as her other alter ego, which is Jane Yates, author. Please tell everybody where they can find you on the web and where they can find your books.
Thank you very much, Douglas, for having me on your show, and Cindy Lady Lake. It's been a real treat for me and an honour to be on the show. So to find my website is www.janeyates.co.uk, and that's got the information of everything. It's got my Twitter and Facebook and everything on there. So thank you.
Okay, great. So everybody please go there and check out Jane Yates's work and buy her audiobooks. Do you have ebooks and audiobooks?
Ebooks, paperbacks, and just the one audiobook, which is Garden, which is the one that you heard.
Okay, great. Okay, Jane, thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. My guest today is an author who has 6 full novels, 5 published. He's also the father of 3 rambunctious boys and has been happily married for over 11 years. He lives in paradise on the island of Oahu, where the gorgeous weather and friendly people entice him outside more often than not. His gaming career has honed his creativity, fueling his flights of fancy. Please welcome Jason Patrick Crawford. Hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Doug. Thank you.
It says here your gaming career has honed your creativity. What were you doing in gaming?
Well, it's not really a career. I didn't get paid for it. But I've been playing role-playing games since Advanced Dungeons & Dragons came out back in the day.
Oh, I see. Okay. That game has been around a long time. I remember that. I remember that when I was in high school, kids were playing that, and I'm probably a little older than you. How does that work? Maybe you can explain what that was all about.
Sure. In the type of games that I play, you create a character, an alter ego for the game's universe according to a set of rules, which are in the books that you may have seen them playing with. And so it's basically a big game of pretend, except it has rules so nobody can say, I got you, no, you didn't. Within this system, you have your character, and your character has whatever he or she has, and you have your abilities. And then the game master, whatever they're called, tells you about the world and makes the world react to what you're doing. So, that's the game. It's the whole premise.
It's like creating a play as you go along.
Right. I think the best term for it I've ever heard is cooperative storytelling.
Yeah, I never got it. I was really into music, and I was in the band, and we looked at those kids like, what's wrong with them? because they would always be off in a corner someplace, all huddled around, sitting on the floor, and they were just there for hours doing this thing.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I forget to eat.
You have written 6 full novels, 5 are published. Why don't you tell us, give us the titles of those, if you would, please?
Sure. So I have one series that has more than one book in it so far. That's the Samuel Buckland Chronicles, which has Chains of Prophecy and Bonds of Fate. Then also in the urban fantasy genre, we have The Drifter. Then going into paranormal romance, we have Seeking the Sun. And then into sci-fi with Cycles of Destruction. And my unpublished novel is a low fantasy, which is Dragon Princess. You
mentioned something, a genre called paranormal romance. What is that?
Mm-hmm. Well, paranormal romance and urban fantasy are really similar. Basically, it's if you have a romantic relationship in your urban fantasy that you couldn't take out without destroying the story, then it's really a paranormal romance. That's all.
Oh, I see. Okay. When the word paranormal, I think of like poltergeist and ghosts and things like that. You would have said abnormal.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's anything, mystical creatures. It's usually set in modern day, so you see a lot of it. Twilight would be classified as a paranormal romance if you wanted to go that way. Whereas Harry Potter would have been classified as an urban fantasy. So that's the difference, is you can't get rid of the romance in a paranormal romance without destroying the story.
I see. Okay. So now the books that you've published, these actual hardback books, are they e-books or both or what?
They're all available in both paper and electronic formats, and 2 of them right now are in audiobook form as well, Chains of Prophecy and Bonds of Fate, and the others are in line to be produced.
You also said here that you live in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. Is that where you're originally from, or did you move there from the mainland? Or
we actually moved there in June, moved here in June, because we decided that living in a desert, because I was in the California desert up until now, was no fun. I'm originally from Louisiana, and not having moisture and rain was killing me.
Yeah, I live in Las Vegas, and I certainly understand that. The summer is a little brutal, 120 degrees, but
a little ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I think Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii a few times. It's certainly a beautiful place. It also says here that you have 3 rambunctious boys. What are their ages?
Ishmael is 8 years old. Beowulf is 6, and Odysseus is almost 3.
Those are interesting names.
I like to read as much as I like to write, so, there you go.
How do they feel about their names?
Well, they don't know all the implications yet. Beowulf knows that he's a literary hero, and he's totally fine with that. Ishmael has heard reference to it, but I don't know if he's internalized it.
Okay. So how did you get started in, you said you grew up in Louisiana. How did you get started in writing? What was your inspiration to do that?
Actually, I didn't start writing until September 2012 as, actually writing stories down in books. My sister-in-law came up to my wife and I and said, you know what, I've got this idea for a book that I've been wanting to write forever. So why don't we all just sit down and have a writing night? That'll be fun. And I said, yeah, okay, sure. Everybody's thought of tossing a book down on paper once or twice. So I just sat down and I took pen to paper. I was actually handwriting at the time. And I started writing The Drifter. It was the first one I wrote. I just couldn't stop. I was just having so much fun.
You said The Drifter was about
the first
what?
one I wrote. It was the second one I published, but the first one I wrote.
Tell us the story, or about the story.
Sure. A homeless man who can't remember what he was doing a month ago. He has these strange powers, like whenever he steps into the street, the cross light changes for him immediately, or he can go to sleep on a city bus and he'll wake up in another city with the bus.
Wow.
Entirely. So, this is very confusing for him, obviously, and he doesn't know what's going on. But he does know that he's being hunted by someone that he refers to as the Dark Woman. He doesn't know who she is, except that she's looking for him. But it turns out that he's a member of a race of beings called Essentials, which embody specific concepts of reality. And he embodies cities themselves. He is all cities at once, all put together. And so they do what he wants. And so he has to figure this out because death, the essential that embodies death, is looking for him so that he can temper his own power without and go places without, killing everyone, which is a problem.
This sounds like it would make a good movie.
I've been told that, actually, and I'd love for that to happen.
How would you go through that process of trying to shop your book to make it into a screenplay to get somebody interested in it for a film?
I have no idea.
All right.
I haven't done it yet. It would be great, but no, I haven't started asking.
I had no idea either. I thought you might enlighten me on that one, but
I do have some family that's in Hollywood, that's involved in Hollywood, but they're very busy. So what I would hope to do is get a little bit of attention first for the writing itself and then bring it up, maybe. I don't know what the process is.
In terms of measured success as an author, obviously it would be just by how many you sell. Is it as simple as that?
Pretty much. I mean, you can set other benchmarks, like you can set awards won. What else? You could go just words written, how many books have I put out? But yeah, if you wanted to talk commercial success, then you have to make money off of it. Right.
Your other book, you said, was a series?
Right. The Samuel Buckland Chronicles starts off with Chains of Prophecy, and that's probably going to be a pentology.
For people that don't know, that might be 5 books.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
Okay. The Samuel Buckland Chronicles it's a much grittier, I'm not going to say less epic, but the characters in it generally are not as godlike as in The Drifter. The main character gets the ability to summon and control angels and demons and genies through the keys of Solomon as magical spells. In the first book, he discovers that the Archangel Gabriel has been captured, and someone is using her divine revelation basically to game the system and come up with scientific inventions and technology that are ahead of time. So, that's a problem when one of your archangels gets captured. So he has to go deal with that. I'm working on book 3 at present.
What was the second one? I'm sorry. Chains of Prophecy and
Bonds of Fate.
Now, if anyone is interested in you, can you please give us your websites and where they can look at your work and buy your work, perhaps?
If you're just looking to get a hold of the books, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and look up Jason P. Crawford or any of the book titles, and you'll find them. If you want to learn more about me and what I do and whatnot, then you can go to my website, which is jasonpatrickcrawford.com.
All right, great. Thank you very much for getting up at this ungodly hour of the morning. Are you usually up at this hour, or are you a late person?
I get up early, but not this early. I'm usually up at about 5:15, so I can go to my job as a high school teacher in Capillet.
Ah, and what do you teach?
Biology and geometry this year.
Well, that's funny. I mean, funny in the sense that you're teaching something very uncreative, and so it's sort of your alter egos. Are you a Gemini?
I am, actually.
Okay, well, that explains it. No, because I'm a Gemini, too, and a lot of us have 2 distinct personalities. One can be very OCD and very meticulous, and the other one can just be free-spirited, thoughts coming to you at all different angles and all different hours. And
right, isn't that strange how it flips back and forth so fast? It's just like, well, we got to follow the rules for this, but I'm writing now, so I don't care about rules.
Well, exactly. When I'm working on my radio show or when I'm doing other projects, I just let go on those. But when it comes to something like shopping, going to the supermarket, I've got my list all made out, and I know exactly, going up and down the aisle so I don't waste a trip. And
Exactly.
It's crazy. It tends to manifest itself in strange tasks that I do. Cleaning the house is another one. Very, very meticulous. Which side do you gravitate more towards?
By nature, I'm going to have to say the creative one, but that's not something that's been in my life all the time. I've been gaming for years, and that was my outlet. So once I started writing, I was just like, wait, I can make something. And, it was really like that. It was really euphoric, that act the first time, because I'd never done anything like it before.
Okay, Jason. Well, listen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been a great time.
No problem. Okay, my next guest, R.A. Johns, lives in Oxfordshire, where she runs a writers group and the Oxfordshire branch of Feed My Reads. Her short stories have appeared in anthologies, ebooks, and audiobooks published by 13 O'Clock Press, Silent Fray, and Horrified Press. This year, she was invited to contribute to Beyond the 13th Chime, a short story collection with Nick Cootie. She received honorable mention status for the third quarter of the L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Futures Contest 2014. Her short film, The Revolution, is in production. Her psychological play, Random 12, was performed by Mithras, did I say that right? Theater Company, right. And Waiting Put On at the Burton Taylor Theater. Breaking Ice was selected for the OUDS New Writing Festival, shortlisted by the Royal Court Theatre, and selected for performance by the head of the New Writing Initiative at the BBC. And she's also currently working on a novel. Please welcome Rosemary Johns. Well, we could get better applause than that. Hold on. There we go. Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks very much.
There we go. So, hello, Rosemary. How are you?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Great. Well, you've got a lot of things to your credit here. The Burton Taylor Theater, it struck me just kind of funny because obviously we know that that's Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Where is that exactly?
It's in the centre of Oxford, and it was established by actually both of them.
Yeah, Richard Burton was probably one of my favorite actors when I was a kid. He was amazing. I don't think there's anybody quite like that today who had such stage presence. I mean, she was obviously fantastic as well, but I was a bigger fan of him than her. I don't know. I think that was very sort of old school acting. They don't teach them like that.
It's the emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's the stage presence. There are actors like that, I think, today, but I think that it's something about being able to command the stage.
I'm not sure that the training is there. Maybe more in England. The American actors don't seem to have that kind of presence. Like, there's a few that are. I think Johnny Depp is very good. I don't know. I think that old sort of formal Shakespearean training that a lot of the great actors
Olivier.
Olivier, sure. John Gielgud was another one. But anyways, let's talk about you. How did you get started in writing? Give us a little biographical background, if you would, please. You know, where you grew up and what you did as a kid and how you got inspired to write.
I'm one of those people that has always written and was always a little bit lost in my own world inside my head. I injured my leg when I was 8 and I couldn't really walk for nearly a year. Oh. And my parents had antique set of Dickens, and I just devoured it. And I read the complete work of Dickens when I was 8, and that was it. I was hooked. And I wrote everything. I wrote plays, I wrote short stories, I wrote my own rather rubbish, childish novels. But that was it. I was writing from that point onwards. But I got very seriously into it once I was at university. And that was when it took off very seriously, and acting as well, and theatre. In summers, I would work with professional theatre companies. I would do backstage, front of house, literally anything I could to learn about the mechanics of it, really. It's really about learning the craft of it, because writing is a craft. So I was one of those people that, you know, writing is sort of in your DNA. It wouldn't matter if you were never published, because you'd be writing.
Well, it's definitely the passion that would drive you, that would feed you. And I think that's true for any sort of artist, be it a performing artist or a writing artist or a painter, sculptor, any of those. The wrong reason to get into this sort of business is because you want to make money. If that's all
Absolutely.
You're interested in, you know, you go work in Wall Street or somewhere like that. You do not go into the arts at all, because
no, you'll likely be disappointed.
And
you'll be working much, much harder for the same returns.
Absolutely. Now, what was the first thing that you had published?
I think the thing that I'm proudest of is that I did first, that sort of showed me the success, was probably the theatre work. I think the first thing I ever got published was when I was 14, and that was a short story. And I never sent them off saying my age. I sent them off as if I was an adult. And that was a short story called April Fools, which was a comedy sci-fi, really, I think. Yeah, so that was the first thing I got published.
Now, is getting published sort of these days with the technology, is it any different than it was back in the days when everybody was in hardback books?
It's totally different. And it's been revolutionized even in the last couple of years. Everything is digital with ebooks. There is still paperback. I mean, that still utterly exists. But the audiobooks, for example, which the 2 clips are from, that the surge of sales for that, for example, in the last 2 years has been massive. So audiobooks have been a huge change and have changed it, the face of publishing, just like ebooks have, like Kindles have. The publishing world is changing, and it's changing daily.
So for an audiobook, is that something you could potentially do yourself if you had or get someone who had a good speaking voice and you had the software to do the recording? Could you just, rather like DIY musicians now who put out their own music?
I mean, mine aren't. They're by someone called ESWin, and they're through the Halfway Press. They're through different publishers and presses. But I know people, and I know authors, indie authors and self-publishing authors, who just in the way that you self-publish a book, you can make your own audio book. So the world of publishing has been opened up. Yes, and there's good and bad to that. The good of that is it's been democratized, and I think that that's great, and a lot of people that wouldn't have got the opportunity, and I think that's really good. And the bad of that is it's often very hard as a reader, I think, sometimes to find the good amongst the slightly more mediocre. I don't know quite how to phrase it, but I think sometimes the gems are often hidden, and it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to get published now than it ever was as well, because for the same reason, there are a lot more people attempting to do it.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And I think you have to work harder. You have to be prepared to put a lot of hours in. It's what we were talking about, not going into it for the money. You don't go into it for it being easy. And I think you have to be very passionate about it and be significantly better because of it being a leveled playing field.
Well, let's listen to one of your MP3s. Which one? We have Blue Gonk Ear in a Jar and 10-Year Itch. I want to listen to the first one. That sounds very funny. Can you tell us anything about that?
The Ear in a Jar?
Yeah.
Is that the first one?
Yes.
It's a blackly comic tale of passion, is what I will say.
Okay. Well, let's have a listen to that.
Ear in a jar. There's not much you can do with an ear in a jar. Well, of course you could display it, and don't think I haven't tried, my dear, but the cleaner rather took offense to dusting it. And good cleaners are so hard to find. You know that, and they're too precious to lose. Not to mention our guests weren't keen on viewing it over their dinner or cocktails. Do what I might to explain. You see, it is rather off-putting to a little soiree to have something of such, shall we put it, passion set amongst the small talk of who's holidaying where for the winter, or how Isaac is doing at his prep school, because it's such a struggle for the poor darling. I've tried keeping it in my room on the bedside table like a nightly reminder, but it got in the way of my alarm clock, and I feared I'd knock it off one morning in a groggy state whilst attempting to slam off that blasted ringing. Why can't we all simply wake up naturally? Why must we be in such a rush? I rather fancied mounting it when I came to consider it hanging there. I got Lucinda to help, although she was desperately squeamish about holding it. No stomach for the task at all. It reminded me far too much of a stuffed hunting trophy. Mostly it brought me in mind of a wolf's head, or the like, and although you may consider that a flattering comparison, my dear, I refuse to cast myself in the role of huntress so brazenly. Anyway, there's this fabulous cabinet-maker in town, Latheby, so terribly quaint. He makes pieces to order which are quite beautiful. I found him on the Russes' recommendation. You know Isaac's parents? I simply gave Latheby the dimensions, and when the oak cabinet arrived, it was darling. I've placed it in the bedroom, which I'm sure you'll be happy to know, and the jar fits perfectly. Now neither cleaner nor guests can moan, because only I can see your ear. It will be our private love, which I imagine was your point. Still, I am rather cross with you for creating all this bother. I didn't know this is what you'd meant when you said you wanted a part of you to always be with me. Anyway, we've worked it out now, haven't we?" "Good story," chorused the customers. "Here," said someone, "your next pastry's on me." "It's the third Kevin's turn," he said, getting up. "This is not one for those with vertigo. It's about..."
Oh, I like that. I like that.
It's taken from, I really like the anthology that it's taken from, which is a flash fiction one, Tales from the Blue Gaunt Cafe. And so as you heard, it then goes on to the next one, as if there's a whole host of storytellers sitting around in the cafe telling these little kind of punch in the gut stories, which I really like.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, the guy that was reading that sounded American.
Yes, which of course, that is the only problem, because of course the voice is my voice and not my voice. It's the voice of a posh female British voice. But yes, it's E.S. Wynne, who's an American narrator.
When you send these out, do you get a choice of who's going to do your audiobook, or is it up to the publisher?
No, it's up to the publisher. And this is the thing about self-publishing or whatever. If you're self-publishing, you have control. If it's with, and I don't self-publish, if it's with an actual publisher, the publisher has control. But in that, because it's a whole host of flash fiction, a lot of people, I think the majority of people within that book are American. So the American voice fits. And a lot of them are male, and there are less female dark fiction writers than there are male. I mean, if you have an audiobook where there are short stories within it, you have one narrator. The only time that there is a difference, if for example it's written by Stephen Fry and then you have Stephen Fry reading it, but usually you have one narrator who's either male or female, and they will read through even if a voice happens to be male or female. But if they're good, like he is, he read that and you got the feel of the character regardless of him being male.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. It really makes me want to hear the rest of it. That was good. All right, let's listen to the other one, The 10-Year Itch. Can you tell us something about that?
The idea came from, essentially, what if divorce was mandatory after 10 years?
That's not a bad idea, actually.
Yes.
Okay, here's The 10-Year Itch.
The 10-year itch. 10 years is a long time to be married, isn't it? Bellini's restaurant is ethereal, lit up in violet and soft white, suspended high above London. I can see the silver ribbon of the Thames and the slow blink of stars. The man across the table is passionately kissing the backs of my hands in the way he knows I love, in between telling me about his next music tour. Multitasking. He's good at that. Husband number 2 gets bored easily. Yeah, musician. I remember yearning for that. When my 10 years with Will were up and the government sent through the automatic divorce, 'cause 10 years is as long as anyone should be monogamous, or that's what the law states, because it's bad for your physical and mental health, and yeah, I get that. I found someone as different as possible. The exact opposite from Will, who's quiet, geeky, and reliable, but okay, we did love each other. Still, it was like every fantasy or suppressed frustration had to escape somewhere, and that was into Xavier, the number 2. Sex is explosive, sweaty, and exciting like I'd never even imagined possible. Our lives are tumultuous and unpredictable, but never boring. Just sometimes, late at night, I miss the boring. We should go tomorrow. Catch a flight to Japan. What? Me too? I wrenched my hand away from Xavier's feathered kisses. Why not? Come on, be spontaneous. I stared down at the dark swirl of my chocolate dessert, tracing patterns with the back of my spoon. My muscles already ache from the tandem skydive he surprised me with this morning for our 1-year anniversary. God, I want to snuggle with a good read in bed, but from the hungry look in Xavier's eyes, I know that's not going to happen. Then when I glance up, I see Will. He's over by the bar, which is a shock in itself because this is the first time I've seen him since the divorce. This isn't the type of place he'd ever have taken me. Too risky, he'd have said, hanging in the clouds. Of course, I still smile at him politely across the room. Will's eyes ache with misery and loss when they meet mine. I didn't expect that. Xavier frowns as he turns to glare at Will. He's possessive like that. I think it's a side effect of the passion. Will's new wife is nuzzling his neck. She's petite and dark, rather like I was at her age, although she has bigger boobs than me, but then Mike always wanted that, so I don't begrudge him. Confused, I apologize that instead of moving on to the next stage, he's simply found himself a substitute for me, because he couldn't have the real thing. Twisting back to Xavier, I clutch his hands between mine so hard I may be hurting him. He leans in and catches my mouth in a desperate kiss. 10 years is a long time, isn't it? That one strikes a bit too close to home, observed one customer with a wry smile. Good one, Rosemary. Time for Kevin the Third, said Kevin, looking around the cafe. Another one that's a bit on the nasty side. Oh, good, said the customers. Go, Kevin the Third. Right. Let me tell you about...
I love the way these just kind of end, where yeah, well, it's the cliffhanger. That one was nice too. I like that. That's the same guy reading, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Is the first one, right? Well, Rosemary, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. This says you're currently working on a novel. Do you want to give us any sneak preview on your new one?
Well, I'm working on two projects that I'm really excited about at the moment, actually. One is a paranormal romance, a dark fiction, and the other is a dark historical fiction. But that's all I'm able to say right now. But they're very close to being ready, and they're both exciting projects. And I have 2 new anthologies that are coming out with Horrify Press on the 30th of this month. The Toy Box, and one that's called I Am Woman, I Am Man. And I have 3 short stories in that. It's a showcase, pretty much a showcase for female dark fiction writers as well, which is good.
Great. Well, we look forward to those. People can find you on Facebook.com, Rosemary and Johns, all one word, RosemArYAnnNJohns. And also on Twitter at Rosemary A. Johns. So if you want to look her up and see, you post when you've got something new out or links to where people can buy.
That's right. I called it the scribblings of a dark fiction writer. So it's quite fun.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's about all the time we've got for today's show. I want to thank my special guests, authors Jane Yates, R.A. Johns, and Jason P. Crawford. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you. Please go and buy their ebooks and their audiobooks because they are fabulous writers, and you won't be disappointed at all. Also, a special thank you to my co-host, Cindy Diadamo. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank you, Douglas.
And this is Douglas Coleman saying good night.
To the